head of the Israeli government, Bibi Netanyahu, and the Likud government are all part of the mob.
That's right. And Israel, I refer to it as a safe country. They set that up just like a safe house. So, you know, the Bush's cronies, they can go over there and escape extradition, can escape prosecution, and you know, they own. I mean, it's like hard to do, Stu. I tell people there's a couple of things I can't tell you. I can't tell you if the mafia took over the government or if the government took over the mafia. I can't tell you whether the press controls the government or vice versa.
Well, it's the Council of 13 has taken over everything, basically. And by the way, the Bushes are setting up banks, and they're studying. Neil Bush is down setting up a bank in Paraguay, in case you were unaware of that. And that's their next haven when they think they're going to escape the extradition side of their treason and sedition one day, if they're brought up on charges, and hopefully they will be. As more people wake up, they're going to get tired of this. And, you know, we're going to have one day probably civil war and unrest, and there will be a problem with these people because, you know, I got an attitude. It's like the Declaration of Independence says we have the right to remove them, to arrest them and remove them. As far as I'm concerned, that's what needs to be done. We need change in America.
They do need to be arrested. And that's the problem. Who do we get to arrest them, Stu?
Well, I think that now we're starting to see, in my opinion, I believe that if the American people keep pressuring, we have you know, a 23% official unemployment rate, even though they say it's around 10%. It's truly 23%. The CIA knows that. I have somebody that monitors those kind of things for the intelligence, or for the Central Intelligence Agency, and he gives me feed on that. And you know, they're afraid that at 25 to 26%, they're going to have to declare martial law to keep from having unrest in the country. Well, you know, they want to make people the fear factor, the Alex Jones type little apex type stooges that are out there, all part of this Jewish identity crap. You know, want people to believe that, oh, we're going to have the troops shooting us in the streets. No, that isn't true. Matter of fact, Veterans Today, Gordon Duff put out, and some of his other colleagues have put out some excellent stories on this crap and who some of these websites are, naming Jones, that have been promoting this fear factor of U.S. troops are going to shoot on American people that were all lies and all this other crap. They're part of the promoting of the fear factor, and so people need to get the fear out of them and realize that this isn't going to happen. And the new Department of Defense Secretary will not allow it to happen. General Dempsey has said he will not allow that to happen. And they're fed up with all this espionage. They want to arrest them all, quite frankly, right now. But, you know, the military has never done that. It's going to have to be the civilian side to push the buttons on the doors to open up the jail cells. And so it comes back to Eric Holder, who's a cover-up meister for them. You have to remember who was Eric Holder, the Attorney General of the U.S. currently. He was the attorney for Mark Rich, another Israeli Assad stooge that's hiding out in Switzerland, running Glencore Commodities, and every time we go to the gas tank or the gas pump, we pay about 5 cents on the dollar extra, so Glencore Commodities and Daddy Bush all can make their money off their commodity trading on oil that affects us at the U.S. pumps. And Lenny Brewer, who has covered up Lanny Brewer, his partner, that was Mark Rich's attorney, that they got Bill Clinton to give that presidential pardon. He had to resign recently, Clayton, because of Frontline doing specials on him and showing that he was covering up all this crap pertaining to this bank bailout and so forth, involving Millman and Mizell and all of them, this Jewish mob, American Jewish mob. And so he had to resign as a result of that because of no prosecution. Now we also have a good gal, Elizabeth Warren, up on the Hill, starting to make some noise on the Senate Banking Committee. And I hope that things are going to progress there. I'm not going to get into things, but you know, I've got some people working with her. I'm hoping that we're going to be able to put the finger on them and shut them down. But They need to have their assets confiscated. When you have 12 men fighting, and 10 of them are in the United States of America. Meyer Rothschild is in New York. David Rockefeller is in New York. Leonard Millman's in Cuba. Larry Meisel's in Denver, Colorado. Daddy Bush floats around the world all the time, but he usually can be found in either Texas or up in Maine, in his primary location. And the list goes on. Most of them are here in the U.S. They can be arrested. Their assets can be confiscated. I put my finger on $30 trillion worth of assets here in the United States in commercial buildings, 500,000 apartment units. That's the largest landlord in the United States, Aimco. And these other entities they've been spinning off of it since I've been identifying this for quite some time. They built most of the shopping centers and most of the sky rises in America, almost everything on every street corner, even though it has a different name, corporate name, and goes back to trust and so forth. I put my finger on tons of that stuff.
Well, what about Capper? What about Capper? And let me also ask you about one of my regulars on my show, and that's Grandma, or V.K. Durham, who controls the V.K. Durham, or the Durham Trust, which is the Peruvian debt. It's worth trillions of dollars, and this is what Bush and Clinton and the whole Bush gang. And by the way, you know, there were 3 Bushes that were listed in the publication put out in World War II, Guide to Jewish Soldiers and Sailors, and they were talking about Jewish heroes from the Revolutionary War, and one of those was Colonel Bush, and another Colonel Bush, and another Major Bush that worked with, supposedly were under General Washington's command. But Cornwall told us that if we allowed the Jewish religion would take over this country at some point in time.
Yeah, that's very true. Now, the gal that you mentioned,
V.K. Durham,
I dealt with her way back in the early 2000 time frame, and you know she's hard to deal with. Yes. At least I found her to be. But she was correct, and her husband was a colonel, and he was murdered. But she has no control over that trust, even though it was in his name and so forth. You know, here's the problem with all these trusts and all this other stuff is Daddy Bush takes it. I'll cite an example, and she'll never get any place with it. She might as well just hang it up, forget about all that, forget about the money side, thinking she's going to receive something. Here's what it amounts to. You know, Leo Wanta has run an operation for the United States government for a number of years, since the 1981 time frame. And he was appointed by Ronald Reagan, what they called the Reagan-Mitterrand protocols. And he had an operation to do many things. One, his operation was to break the Russian ruble. He was successful, him and his team. This was U.S. Treasury, counterintelligence, CIA. Leo was one of the top secrets we ever had. Matter of fact, I had a conversation with him a couple of weeks ago. I've known him. He worked with and he's associated with Gordon Duff. He's associated with others. Everybody knows it, Tom Hennigan and others. And here's what the deal is. You know, he was given almost $4.5 trillion initially between the French government, the U.S. government, the Chinese government, the British government, and the German government to break the Russian ruble. They kicked it all in what they called the Reagan-Mitterrand protocols. They had other operational side to them that I cannot discuss. Some of it, it's not privy to me. Others, I'm aware of, and I won't discuss it. But one of it was to break the Federal Reserve. And they were unsuccessful. Well, when Daddy Bush took over from Ronald Reagan, became president of the United States, which he was president behind the scenes to some degree, running his side operation of a duplicate Iran-Contra, drugs and guns, where there was the legitimate side of things going on, and he duplicated it, you know, and they got so convoluted that it was pathetic. Well, when he took over, he basically jailed Leo Wanta in a dungeon in Switzerland. He took control of the America Trust that Leo was in control of, like Durham has been in control of her husband's, supposedly her husband's trust. She'll never get it. But the difference is this. It took Leo 30 years. It took him going before the Supreme Court back this past fall, and it took Nancy Reagan and others to put an end to this, and it was kind of like, put to me this way, that trust and that control of that money grew from $4.5 trillion to $30 trillion in the past 20 some odd years. And this was money that was allocated by Ronald Reagan when an intelligence officer's operation is over with. They get their 10%, which is the norm of profit, which is the normal thing with the U.S. government when they're running covert operations of states. Leo was entitled to that. Leo has $4.5 trillion deposited. They have $7 trillion deposited in a Virginia bank right now, and $4.5 trillion is going to be paid out to him soon. Jack Lew said he signed off on it. Everybody's going ballistics over it. And he's going to be paying income tax on $1.5 trillion. He's going to be paying $1.5 trillion soon to the U.S. Treasury, which they keep trying to do. Now, Christine Lagarde, the head of the IMF, a good gal, a former French intelligence, former French finance minister, has been trying to clean things up as well, and all this derivative problem and all these banks for the IMF. And, France got their money. They kept out of this Reagan-Mitterrand protocol. They got their money back. The Chinese got their money back. And, they loaned money to Spain, and they loaned money to Greece that kept them from collapsing. And Leo wants us trying to pay this money, and Daddy Bush doesn't want, should we say, Leo had to take this $4.5 trillion and forget about the other $30 trillion to stay alive, and I'll leave it at that. But this is, there's a lot of people out here with a lot, they had spouses that were military, like Durham and others. They'll never get any place, Clayton. I'd just tell you that right now, because I've watched this thing where we have a U.S. intelligence officer right now. This is under DOD control right now. We have a U.S. new Secretary of Treasury that has signed off on this. Jack Lew said, put the money in the Treasury. Solve our current economic problems. You've got $1.5 trillion to spend, U.S. government. And never seen such resistance. And as Daddy Bush said, over my dead body. Well, it might be over, quote unquote, I don't want to say what he said, but we're going to see a lot of things happen possibly from this. But
let's talk for a minute about what's going to happen. Now, I'm not like Alex Jones, and Alex, by the way, I helped promote him. I helped him get started. I interviewed him, and I let him on some of my expos when Bill Cooper was warning me about him.
Yeah, I remember old Bill. They whacked him.
2 weeks before that, I was supposed to get with Bill Cooper, and we were going to combine Veritas and the Free American and our radio shows and work together. 2 weeks later, he was dead. 2 months later, they tried to kill me. And, it's no accident, it's a no accident when somebody shows up bragging about, oh, you've been hallucinating, Clay? Well, you can thank us for that. So,
well, Clay, I want to inject there. I've known you since way back. We met in, I think it was 94, 95, maybe 6 in that time frame. I think in Vegas. And, I've been on your show way back years ago several times. And, I've known you, and you've been out there and hammering the hell out of them. And you've been right on target with the Jewish connection, even though maybe people didn't understand what we know now, especially after, as many have told me, Stu, you stood in front, like Gordon Duff said, it came public that you can stand in front freight train. If it hadn't been for you, we would have never known who the people really were. But it does come back, and it isn't the Jewish people itself, the true Israeli bloodline out of the 12 tribes. It's this fake Jews that want everybody to think that this is anti-Semitic. Anti-Semitic isn't anti-Jewish. It's actually the Semitic were Arabs and others that people don't understand. But they've got this big front going on. It's all tied to this mob. And we got to get past this hatred of of Gentiles, or should we say Israelis or Arabs or anything else. We're being controlled by a fake identity Jews out of Russia, Khazarians, who control our U.S. government and who control the Israeli government, and they keep using our kids to go to war for their profit, and they're using our military and our government because we're the most powerful, the USA. They're using us, the American people, and our kids, and we're dying for a bunch of mobsters who are in control of these two countries in particular. And it's all intertwined, and it's all this big facade over here and big facade over there, and it's time to shut them down. It's time to keep them exposed, keep them on the front lines, keep telling the American people the truth.
I feel the same way. Let me interrupt you for just a second here. I feel the same way. And the ADL will tell you that I started the militias. They try to give me, blame it all on me. I was the one militia guy that they wouldn't interview. They wouldn't interview me on CNN. They'd get Norm Olson in there. You can have my guns when you take it from my cold dead fingers. Well, I did start the militia, but guess what? I did it, folks, in the governor's office of my state. And the militias were the exact right thing to do, still the right thing to do, if we could get honest people like maybe Gordon Duff or you or me to command it. But what they do, and they did this, remember the Tri-States militia?
I remember.
$1,776 a month is what the FBI was paying them to try to destroy the militia movement.
Yeah, I remember Time Magazine had me and here Time Magazine had done stories for me and about the Denver crowd and exposing Silverado, my in-laws, bank and all that. Are you still?
Yeah, I'm here. We still got it.
And here they had done that, and the Denver Post used to do stories for me. They bought that out, and here I get a nice fold-out. I'm in that fold-out. One of the 5-star generals of militias controlling 38 states. Well, yeah, I created a militia, but monitored Dole, founder, StewWebb, an anti-Semitic who made death threats to Jewish families in Denver. Never occurred. No anti-Semitism to me. My daughter's a Jew by her mother, should we say, an Israeli by her mother, even though it was a crime syndicate, part of this satanic crime syndicate. And I don't have anything against the Jewish people themselves. It's these mobsters. But what did they put on the front page of the Denver Post in 1995 after they blew up the Oklahoma City building, trying to blame it on the militias and other people tied to Tim McVeigh, which was them, not us.
By the way, Tim, I published his death certificate.
Monitored by the FBI, domestic terrorist team is potentially dangerous. Front page Sunday, Denver Post, Time Magazine. I've been there just like you were, Clayton. And in those Southern Poverty Law Center reports that were coming out that the ADL was pushing. And they're a bunch of pathetic nutcases.
They're the real haters here. We don't hate anybody. People have asked me, Clay, why do you hate the Jews? And my response is, I don't hate the Jews. I kind of admire them. If us white boys had it as together as the Jews do, we'd own the Federal Reserve. We'd own the Bank of England. We'd own the International Monetary Fund. We'd control all that, and it would be good for the people. Under the Jewish control, and this ain't nothing new, Stu. There's no such thing as a New World Order. What we're talking about here is Pharisees. They've been around. They killed Jesus because he was the first rebel that basically solved the problem we got today. How do we fight evil without becoming evil?
He came to save them. Clayton, I want to touch on something. I think that a lot of people don't understand. They need to go back to the time. It's not the true tribes of Israel and those those that came from Israel and have that bloodline. It's the fake ones, like you say. And, you know, go back to your Bibles, folks. You know, I'm a Christian. I believe in Christ. I have a strong faith in Christ and God. He's done things that I could never understand, but I'm still breathing after 30 attempts. If you read Genesis 3:13, I think it is, and you see where Eve says in the Garden of Eden, you know, eating of the apple, he beguiled me. And she had a dual conception. She had sex with the devil, with a fallen angel, whatever you want to call him. Okay, there was a dual conception. There's where the first murder came from. Cain and Abel killed his brother. It was in the bloodline. Okay, people don't understand that. Go to Genesis 6 where it says the fallen angels mate with humans. I am beginning to believe that these 12 families in particular, and these 12 individuals may have that bloodline today. And I'm a firm believer because I've had a friend, Ed Slade, that was a U.S. scientist, was credited for the Apollo landing on the moon. He says, still those bastards gave him credit. He says, the Apollo landed on the moon not because of my jet propulsion, but because of their anti-gravity. And he worked with the aliens, so-called aliens at Area 51. He was Jewish, but he says he came to know Christ, and he understood that. I said, Ed, if you had known that when you worked there, would you have done these projects for them? He says, no, because they're fallen angels. He said, they are the fallen angels, and they showed up, you know, in our time in Roswell, and then it was the connection to the humans again. And that 1954 to 2012 agreement. And I've got some stuff up on my website about Ed Slade and so forth. And my website, by the way, folks, is being redesigned for mobile apps. You'll be able to get on your cell phones and iPads here. Hopefully by the end of the week, I'm, you know, cleaning up everything. And I'm just kind of like putting everything on one page, all the links to my site. So you'll be able to go scroll down one page, and there are all the links of all my stuff over the years that I've put up. But Ed said repeatedly, he says, you know, we have to look at the bigger picture. He says they're cloning, you know, they're building these bases on Mars and the moon. That's where all this money is gone, according to sources of mine. These 1,500 trillion that they've stolen in the past 10 years under these derivatives and artificial mortgages, that they're building these huge bases. They're you know, kidnapping humans. The whole bit, and these 12 are in control of all this crap, and they're in control of all of us, and they are bringing about.
Matter of fact, I wrote a book about this, almost two of them actually, one about the future, one about the past, going back 10,000 years to where these fallen angels, so-called fallen angels, were in control, and this planet, we've been slaves on this planet for hundreds of thousands of years. The Bible only goes back a short time. I believe we've been, and the reason the UFO thing is so top secret, why you got the men in black, is very simple. They don't want you to know that we could have lunch on the moon and be back here for supper without using a drop of gas.
Yeah, you got it. And you know, it's kind of amazing, but they're screwing this planet up down here for us, the human race. And they're constantly doing this cloning in Hope, Arkansas. And they're constantly doing different things in genetic engineering. What is this all about? It's about the evil that we are up against, that God said he cast them out of heaven and cast them to the earth. We're down here, humans. We have power and authority over them. I've seen the devil, Clayton. I had him in my bedroom when I was married to a witch doctor and cast him out in the name of Jesus and by the blood of Jesus. And he went right through the front door. Most bizarre thing I've ever seen in my entire life. And it's off the charts. But that happens. We have power and authority over them. And we have power and authority not only to cast them out, but we have the power and authority as humans to get rid of them.
Well, you know what, let me just stop you for a moment. Let me stop you for just a second here, because one of my favorite quotes of Jesus is that he said, you can do what I've done and more. And I wrote books about this 45 years ago. They'll be released this year, hopefully. Stu, if I've got some, You know, there's very few of us. I'd say we are the remnant. We are the people that are trying to, we are the watchmen on the walls. I was sent here back in 1946 after they blew up the first atomic bomb there at White Sands, and I ended up living across the street from where they blew that up. Now, I don't know, maybe just coincidence, right? Maybe just coincidence, but you know, I kind of felt the same way when I started the militia in the Free American. It was because I said I could not sit back and watch something like Waco happen again. I could not do that without doing something, without trying to do something. And
you know, I was sitting as a political prisoner when Waco happened, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. You know, of course, they dismissed the charges against me. That was the silence me, kept me for that 10.5 months. But, you know, after that, that's one of the reasons, and many others, I created a militia, and I don't want to get into it. There are things that's still in existence, and as far as I'm concerned, you know, the only way that anybody should even do, you know, that's so infiltrated today, that's the reason I broke up Goal back a year after I started it. But yeah, people remained intact county to county, city to city. But, you know, Clayton, we've got to get on the same page. And everybody needs to. I keep pushing for the recall of all you congressmen and senators to sign for the Patriot Act and sign the NDAA Act, the Detention Act, without trial or without going before court. They've committed a violation of their oath of office, which is like a corporation in their fiduciary duty. They have violated their oath of office, uphold and defend and support the Constitution by signing off on that. Therefore, you could do a recall. And it's pretty easy to do a recall. I'm trying to get somebody, an attorney, to work up a boilerplate, should we say, that we can all use to put up on, you know, an internet site to spread it. And it's pretty easy. You just draft it up, take it to your Secretary of State's office, you register it, you have a certain period of time according to each and every state to go in and you pay a fee and to go in and get the signatures required from legitimate voters. And if Occupy and all the We Are Change and all the other movements and everybody out here would do that state to state and go after the 435, not all the new 100 new faces, because we haven't determined who the bad guys are yet, but those other 435 that are up there are pretty damn corrupt, and their answer to AIPAC, they're controlling the Israeli-America Pact, which is nothing but the Mossad operation inside the U.S., this crime syndicate, tied to the ADL, tied to the Jewish Defense League, tied to the Southern Poverty Law Center, the Jewish mob in America that never has left, okay?
That's right. Meyer Lansky never went to jail. Al Capone did. Now, I'm almost out of time here, Stu. Let me tell you, I want to have you back on, maybe even tomorrow, if you could do that.
I would do that with you, and we could just finish this discussion.
Because this, you have really hit it here. If we don't work together, folks, we're screwed. You will be in that concentration camp. You'll be in that detention center, and we've already got them. They're called state and federal prisons. Ayn Rand was absolutely right. She said they have no control over honest citizens, so they have to make criminals out of us. They're going to try to do that, stroking the pen. Remember what Bill Clinton said? Stroking the pen, law of the land. Pretty cool, huh? Obama is going to make guns illegal, and if you own a gun and you refuse to turn it in, you're going to become an instant criminal, just like, you know, somebody smoking a joint in Texas 40 years ago. You could have got life for what you had in your pocket. That's a police state, folks. We are seeing it in full bloom now. You can take these Oxycontin, and you can take these sleeping pills, and you can take these Quaaludes, and all you gotta do is just check with your doctor. He'll give it to you. And then we got a 200,000% markup for the pharmaceutical companies. And it's the pharmaceutical companies that are protecting the heroin over there. This is their source. This is what they make a lot of the drugs on. So they got an inside deal. They can get that heroin in the country legally.
And you know, it's these pharmaceuticals that come back to these 12 families. They own everything. They're controlling 95% of the economy. In 81, they only controlled 20%, Clay. We have to shut them down, take their money back, get this Congress and Senate, these criminals, out of office, cut the head off the snake, I call it. You go after